Recording. Today we're going to be looking at jumping into and getting started on our gearbox project. Up until this point, we've covered really all the elements that we need to for this project. And our objective for this project is to do a couple things. Number one, to size and identify vendor products that we would incorporate into a design, okay? And we're going to be getting our gears, our shaft, our bearings, keys all ready right before we would start actually creating, if you would, detailed drawings, okay? That's all we really have time for, and it also meets the competencies or the things that we need to for, you know, kind of checking it off that you're doing it. So, so what we're going to be creating here are like, I'm going to call it the inners of a double reduction gearbox, okay? So the gears, the shafts, doing our processes that we've been looking at, specifying bearings, as well as we're going to be creating a layout and everything, like I said, right before we're going to really start like creating the drawings. The only reason we're not creating the drawings is we just simply don't have the time in this class. That's all. Okay. But the bulk of the design work is what we're going to be working on here. So, so we already started and looked at kind of the very beginnings of, so last week you were assigned to do some things. So for session number 1, which was last week, I'm coming to this class understanding that you have read chapter 15, which goes through the process of how to get through and the things that need to be done for a single reduction gearbox. You took the chapter 15 quiz. Okay. If you didn't, it's gone. Okay. Because I needed it for today, and that's going to help you to, I just wanted it there to make sure that you read the chapter so that when we're here talking about the tasks that are going to occur and the things that need to be done and determining the order of things, that everybody knows what we're all talking about, okay, and that they can participate. And then the third thing I had you do was to watch the short video. I think it's about 10 minutes long, about how a reduction drive works. So it kind of gives you that inside look of the very thing that we're going to be looking at today. So session 1 is behind us. This is session number 2 then that we're going to be on. And this is where we're going to kind of start getting our feet wet. So the first things first, we're going to be looking at creating a project task list. Okay. I will do, and I'll go over, I'm going to discuss the scope of our double reduction gearbox again, so that you have a good idea. I'm going to give you guys your individual train ratios and the design specifications. Okay. Those are in my basket here. You get to pick, everybody gets to pick one. And we'll discuss the specs in a bit as we get into things. Then you're going to brainstorm the tasks that need to be completed for this design. So based on reading about the process, the things that we've done previously, and our discussion in a little bit, we're gonna together determine what are the tasks that need to be done to get this completed. And then you're going to add some dates and times and all sorts of things. And we'll look at the requirements for that task list. Add some additional columns for some notes, and then you're also going to identify resources that you need to complete those tasks. So are there any specific spreadsheets that you're going to need, or vendor catalogs, or websites that you're going to want to reference, or chapters or pages in the book? You want to be sure that you kind of identify those, so you know to gather those as they get closer. Then we're going to be talking today about an overview of our gear design, okay, and then an overview of the gearbox design. Now, when we're working on this project, you guys have done all of these things in terms of me giving you a case study, or you've looked at, you know, out of the book specifying different things. So you've done all the details of gear design, shaft design, bearings, you know, all that kind of stuff. But what this project does is it kind of gives you now a place where we're going to bring those elements together. And you're going to see how, as you design things and go through the process, that one element is going to affect another, and you might have to go back and forth between those to get those to work together. Okay. And then you're going to go to the next element and kind of see how that's going to affect things. So, so this is a really nice project for kind of bringing the things that we've done together already. Now we're doing it at this spot in the class because it just happens to be where we've completed the elements we need for it. Okay. And rather than waiting till the end of the class, I thought this would be a better place to put it. So, so that's why we're doing it here. Now, when I talk about overview and when I talk about, you know, like giving you what you're going to do, I am not giving you every single detail. It is truly an overview. I'm going to call myself the cruise director. Okay. That's all that I'm doing. I'm kind of putting this stuff out here. Here's what I need you to do. And now, but you all are going to be going through the same process, different specifications. So everybody's going to have different numbers, but you're all going to be, following each one of the different steps. So what my requirement is for you is before you ask me a question, and it's not that I'm not available, but I want you to get used to checking resources before coming to me. So you got to do two things before you say, Kelly, I'm stumped. I need your help. Okay. I want to know, have you maybe talked to a classmate, maybe bounced it off of them? Have you done some research or gone back to your old problems to see where you're at? Okay. I'm not just going to come over and somebody say to me, I don't know where to start. I'm going to say you got to start. Okay. I'm not going to help you with stuff like that. You got to just jump in. This is going to be very much, I'm trying to mimic it like what work is going to be. You're going to get some pretty vague, specifications. I got to do this. You're going to get some layout stuff. Like it's going to kind of look like this, but then you're going to be putting all the details on it. Okay. You're not alone, but I also want to make sure that you're not dependent on, me or people like me. Does that make sense? You want to be able to work independently and work through things. Okay. Or at least have exhausted some resources before, putting up the white flag and saying, I need your help. Okay. So, so that's going to be a requirement as we go through as well. Because you've done each and every one of these things, you've got places to start. So let's look at the scope and discuss what our double reduction gearbox is going to kind of look like. I have some handouts here in class. Evan, you're online, so you're going to want to look at this PDF. And then additionally, there's a layout in the layout assignment that we're going to be looking at as well, okay, to get started. So if you want to kind of pull those things up, that would be ideal so that you can see those, but you'll also see them underneath my camera here. Okay. Let's discuss kind of the scope of what we're going to be doing. Okay. Now, I don't have a pretty pictorial picture for you for what we're going to be accomplishing. Again, this is going to be a little bit more like in real life. You're going to probably get a sketch, not even done in CAD, a sketch of what we need to be done. And a lot of times it's going to be in 2D form as opposed to pictorial form. And here what I've done is I've given you a layout. Okay, a layout of what we're going to be accomplishing. So you'll notice that it's pretty, I don't know, I'm not going to say rough, but there's not a lot of details, but the center lines are going to represent the center lines of the shafts that we're going to be using. This is a double reduction gearbox. So this on the top, you're going to want to label this. This is going to be my input. Okay, I'm going to be getting my horsepower, my RPM on the input. The handouts are up here, Jonathan. Okay. And then we're going to be sending that torque and horsepower to the center line of our first pair of gears, our pinion and our gear. This is the first reduction. In the book, it was a single reduction gearbox, and then they went on, and they were on the output. Okay. We're going to do a second reduction. Okay, second reduction. So the input for the next reduction is going to come from the output of the first reduction. So we're going to have our torque come in. It's going to be transmitted down. We're going to slow this second shaft down. And then the pinion on the second set is going to drive the gear on the second set. And then it's going to go out from here. Okay. This is called an inline parallel shaft design. Okay, everybody's going to do this layout. I'm not going to have you guys switch around. There are other ways that you can accomplish this. If you want to make it shorter, you can make it a right angle, but we're all going to do the same arrangement. Now, over on the right-hand side, all that I have is a right side view of the pinion, the gear for the first set, the pinion, and the gear for the second set. Okay. These X's down here, these are representing the center lines of what would be the bearing supports on either side, of the gearbox. Now, we would, according to our chapter 15, we would then be building sides around this, if we wanted to actually enclose it, but we're not getting that far. Okay. But we need to represent and know where we believe the center lines of our gears are going to, or I'm sorry, of our bearings are going to be. So we're going to represent them in a simplified view like this. Okay. Now the thickness here, these are the gears. This is where I'm just saying, these are where the center lines are. And you'll notice that all my dimensions have X's. Okay. You are going to be creating your own layouts. I'm not giving you this layout. I'm giving you a picture right now, but you will be creating a layout in CAD. I'll show you some things that you can start with if you want to use AutoCAD. You could use Creo if you want to. I don't care. But you'd have to have some sort of an initial layout. All right. And this layout will come after you do your initial picking of your gears. Okay. We have to have some gears to know what our layout's going to look like and what the sizing is going to be, because you will be drawing these all to scale. Okay, your gears have to be to scale. So once you pick out your gears from gear design, you're going to know what your face width is at that point. So now you can actually draw it in there. You're going to know if there's going to be a hub and how large that's going to be. You have to draw a hub in there. I just drew these face width only. Some gears have hubs, some gears don't. Okay, so I just kind of went generic here. Okay, so then that's going to help you to decide what your distances are going to be and how wide then your spacing of your bearings are going to be overall. Okay. Down at the bottom, you're also going to fill in, once you do your gear design, I want to know what are the number of teeth, the diametral pitch and the pitch diameter of your pinion. Pinion number 1 is on our input shaft, and it's going to be the first one that's going to be the pinion of the first reduction. Gear number 1 is going to be engaged with pinion number 1. So it's going to be the gear in the first reduction. And I want to know the same information too. So all you're going to do is you're going to tell me the number of teeth, and you can type this in using AutoCAD or whatever, but I need to know that information. Okay. Now this is going to be a project that you're going to be putting together so that, you could put it as a portfolio item if you're interviewing for a job and saying, hey, these are the types of things that I worked on. Okay. You will need to put this on a WCTC border, and I have those for you. I'll show you where those are in just a second. But this is what we're going to be starting with. Okay. And so through our process, we're going to be picking the gears, sizing the shafts. There's going to be 3 shafts here, and doing our bearings. And then additionally, they're not drawn on here, but we're going to also do the keys and locational elements as well. Okay. Questions so far, layout wise and kind of project wise. Okay. Does it make a little bit more sense? Double reduction gearbox. So instead of having 4 bearings, okay, we're going to have 6 bearings, and we're going to have 3 shafts, and we're going to have 4 gears that we're going to be using. So it's just more. Okay. The layout's going to be exactly like it. Yes. Yes. And then what you're going to be adding in here is you're going to be drawing them to scale. You're going to have some actual dimensions here for your, for your overalls, but yeah, this is what you need. And whether you do it in AutoCAD, and I do have the borders out there for you, or if you do it in Creo, it does need to be on a WCTC border. Okay. Because I want this to be project. BJ.
Yeah, can you just draw the diametral pitch, or do you need like the number of teeth all the way across?
Oh, no, just what I have here. This is layout work. This is layout work. No, you don't have to draw the teeth. And actually it's gonna run faster for you, all that kind of stuff. Just do the pitch diameter. If you end up doing it in Creo, I don't care if you do, these elements have to be here. Okay, so a layout has to look like this. So, so keep that in mind. All right. Let me show you in AutoCAD how you would create the layout. Well, I'm not going to show you the layout. I'm going to show you what you can use for it. So I'm going to go over to our module 7, and you'll notice, the very first thing in module 7 after kind of this stuff. So I guess the 4th one down, we have WCTC drawing borders A through C size. I use the C size for what I created there. Okay. If I click on there, these are each one of the downloadable folders or downloadable files. When you download any one of these, A, B, or C, and you pull it up in AutoCAD, you don't have to do that right now. But what I did do is I set these up so that when you pull it up in the corner here, you'll notice that I have all of your borders or all of your layers set up for you already. So you don't have to, come in with a generic and then try to do everything. So object line layer, has a line typeset that's, going to be consistent with an object line. Those are always the thickest. There's a hidden, center, dimension for notes, okay? And all that kind of stuff. So if you were like, oh, I don't remember what all the borders were, if you pull this in, or I'm sorry, all the layers were, if you pull it in, the layers are here for you. And I expect you to use them, okay? That's part of being professional, all right? Usually companies are going to have standards that they have, and you guys in your, no matter who you would have taken, you would have set up layers, put up in the appropriate line styles. If you have questions about them, I can help you with that, but I'm sure the gist was about the same, right? So, so those are there for you on each one of the borders, okay? So I would encourage you to bring the border in first, and then you can just simply click on the element down here to fill it in. So don't leave T6, T4, T1, T2, and T3. Those are tags. Make sure that you actually put in, okay, what is the material? What are your initials? What is the, the name of what you have going on here? So if we go back to the layout that I created, if we zoom in at the bottom here, I've got these all filled in. And if they're not filled in, if I like material, that's non-applicable, but I'm going to put on NA and not just leave it blank. Okay. You've got to put these things in there. So, so make sure that they're filled in. Make sure that they're filled in. Okay. Any questions so far? So this is kind of, I just wanted to pull the layout up, and I've just kind of explained a little bit more of it, but we'll review it one more time. But you kind of see what we're going to be doing as you relate it back to chapter 15. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back underneath, and we're going to look at, we're going to look at the other sheet that was here, and this is the criteria and your design specifications. Okay, criteria and design specifications. So for our double reduction gearbox, we're going to design it with 2 reductions. The production quantity is going to be 2,000. So I want you to be thinking in terms of not custom parts, but parts that's why we're using purchased gears. We want to be able to, pull these in, and they're not a crazy large number, but there's too many for us to, want to make ourselves. 20-degree pressure angle for everything. The design life is 5 years. Parallel inline shafting is what we looked at on our layout. Shaft spacing is not critical. And really what that means is, if we go back to our layout, I'm not super worried about like this overall dimension, like between the bearings. Okay. So you don't want to make it too skinny, but you don't have to worry about, a maximum size either. Factor of safety is 2, which we've been using in many of our calculations. 100% efficiency on your design calculations. We're going to have an electric motor input and then moderate shock load on the output. And that's going to be helpful in some of the ways that you kind of size and determine, for instance, your design horsepower, okay, when you're doing your gears and such. Now down below, you're going to notice that your design specifications, everybody's going to be going through the same process. Everybody has the same criteria as we've been saying, but everybody gets a different horsepower, input shaft RPM, and an overall gear train ratio. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pause the video for a little bit, our recording, and we're going to get our specifications, and everybody's just going to randomly pick one out of here. And then on the sheet that you have here, you're going to then fill in your numbers, and then like it's your official. Okay. So I am going to pause the recording. Okay. What does this mean? So as you look at your horsepower that you got, so I'm going to pull up a random one here. Okay. And nobody got this one because it was still left over in the basket. So I've got a 0.5 horsepower. This is going to be the horsepower that's coming in and leaving on your gearbox. Okay. So it's going to remain the same throughout the both stages. Okay. That is one of the assumptions that we have 100% efficiency in our gear calculations. And if you read in the chapter for shaft design, gear design, we always assume the horsepower is going to be the same rating. There might be losses, but they're going to be negligible compared to our design factor of safety of 2. Okay. Our input RPM. Okay. So if we go back to our layout, that is on the top here. That's going to be your input RPM. That's how fast this shaft is going to be going. Okay. So in the case of what I have here, I have 870 RPM. on my input. Okay. And then my overall gear ratio. This is from the input to the output. Now remember, you're a double reduction gearbox. This is what we would equate to, if you remember back in kinematics or in basic mechanisms, this is your train value, okay? Train value is going to be multiplying the first velocity ratio times the second velocity ratio, okay? So in my case, I have a 9-to-1 ratio. That means that I can use two numbers for my one number for my first ratio, my second ratio that multiply to be 9. Now, a good place to start is the square root of, right? So I could take 3 and 3 if I wanted to. I could take 2 and 4.5 if I wanted to, or 4.5 and 2. Okay. So, and it doesn't have to be an even number. You can literally, let's say you have the number, well, not 4 is not a good example. If you have 6, if you have 6 to 1, you can take the square root of 6, and you could have the square root of 6 on the first one, square root of 6 on the second one, or you could have 2 and 3. Okay, whatever you want. You are the designer. Isn't that fun? I'm not like giving it to you anymore. I'm not like having you read a problem statement. You get to choose. Okay, so good. All right, and then your output then is going to be, if I've got a 9-to-1, that means that my input is going 9 times faster than my output, right? And then depending on what I have here, so I'm going to do a for instance. Let's say I'm going to do 3-to-1 on this one, 3-to-1 on this one, because I have a 9-to-1 ratio train value. That would mean that if I have, what did I say, 870, right? Yeah. If I have 870 here, RPM on my input, if I'm going to be 1/3 the amount, what's 1/3 of 870? We all have our calculators out because we carry our calculators with us. When I was in school, that I was like on the ready. I had my calculator with me all the time. 290 RPMs, right? Okay, that's my first reduction. Now, the input for my second reduction is 290. It's the output from the first reduction. So you have to keep this in mind when you do your gears, okay? Because you're gonna have to do 2 spreadsheets, one for the first velocity ratio, one for the first reduction, one for the second. The second reduction's input is the output of the first reduction. And then 1/3 of that, what do we get for my output overall? What is it? 96.6 RPM. So if I would go from my input 870, I would divide it by 9. I should have 96.6, right? If we did the math correctly. Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of like how that's going to go. Don't forget that your input on your second reduction is the output on the first reduction. Okay. All right. So that's what these numbers mean to you. That's what these numbers mean to you. All right. Okay. All right. So that's kind of our overalls. Now we have those. Let's go back to, does anybody have any questions on the criteria or what they mean as far as your specifications to our layout? Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Evan, you doing okay?
Yep, I'm good so far.
Awesome. Now I'm gonna go back. We talked about our borders. Let's go back to module 7. And we're gonna look at our overview. And we're going to go to session 2. So we've discussed the scope of the double reduction gearbox project. Okay. Everybody got their ratios and their design specifications. That's what this sheet is. So if you're in class, you got this. Otherwise, if not, it's there for you. So now that you know what we're going to be doing, not all the details. Okay. We don't have a pretty picture here. We've just got, what the bones are that you need to accomplish. And then as you pull these elements together, it's going to become more and more clear, and that's okay. But now what we want to do is we want to brainstorm the tasks that are needed to complete this design. Now, what I'm gonna have you also reference is in our module 7. I hate that it always does this. In our module 7, I have it broken out into smaller elements that you're going to be first of all, doing, okay? Because I know what the whole project is. So you want to make sure that these things are on your task list. And there might be some additional ones that you guys brainstorm and come up with, which is totally fine. And my order isn't necessarily the order, though. I want to tell you that. You might choose to do it in a different order as a class. So you'll notice here that underneath the quiz was there, but then your things that you're going to be handing in for me are going to be your task list, which we're going to be generating. But as far as design work, it's going to start with the gears. You're going to create your layout once you have your gears picked out. Then you're going to do your shaft design. Then you're going to pick out your bearings. You're going to do key design. Then there's going to be a couple more locational elements in terms of like retaining rings as well as shoulders. Okay, making sure that those are in place. And then you're going to have a final layout that kind of, you know, does all the stuff that you ended up picking, okay, through this process. And then finally, you are going to be making a project portfolio, right? So if you kind of look in terms of those are kind of the big steps that you're going to be going through, but there might be additional ones that you are, you know, that you think as you read through that chapter as a group that we're going to be, you know, that might come out of that. So this is a reference for you, okay? Because you want to make sure that these elements are there because those are going to be what you're going to be responsible for. But then also you are going to be, you know, kind of coming up with your own elements and what order they go in. That is no particular order there, okay? That's no particular order. So what I'm going to do at this time is I am going to pause the recording so that we can kind of do some of this brainstorming and probably use our whiteboard up here and then we can, or maybe underneath my camera because Evan is virtual. And then you guys can start, you know, kind of getting your ideas going. So I'm gonna pause. Okay, so we're gonna look at in module 7, back down over here. I'm gonna pull up the Gearbox project list, and this is the assignment that you're going to be handing in. So these are the requirements for what you're going to hand in for the project task list, which is what we just created that Evan cataloged all the information. So first of all, you're going to list the tasks as identified by the class during our brainstorm session. So you're going to be using that list that we got. Then what I want you to do is I want you, and this is an individual thing, not a group thing. I want you to estimate the amount of time that you're going to be spending on that task. Now, when I say task, I mean, for instance, gear design overall. You don't have to try to figure out the time for each one of those elements that you put underneath. Just gear design, 2 hours. Gear design, 3 hours. Whatever you feel personally it's going to take you, okay? Then you want to do that same thing for shaft design, bearing design, key design. Those are like kind of the big elements through there, not each one of the little tasks underneath or the subtasks. So you want to put a column for the estimated time for the bigger items. And then you're going to have another column where it's going to have the task actual time. So for right now, you're just going to predict how long you think it's going to take. But as we progress through the project, I want you to keep track of your time. And then that way you can fill in what your actual time was when you're done. And then you can compare the two. Not graded at all. It's just really for perspective of what I thought it was going to be and what it actually was. Okay, that's it. But I want you to see that from the front end and then from the back end. I want you to put a task project due date in there. Now, obviously, it's probably going to coincide with the due dates that I have for those items on the calendar. So you can look to the calendar for those, but you know, we want to have a due date for each one of those. And then what was the task completion? Because you're probably going to get some of these done before, you know, each one of the due dates. So you can put where your completion date is. Additionally, I want you to have a column to identify the resources that you need for that task. So again, you already identified those as in the what's needed area of that spreadsheet that Evan created. And then just a column where you can maybe put some notes down, just kind of debrief like how this went, what went well, what didn't, just anything that you might want to just note about the project. Okay. Now I want you to use Excel. And Evan already has it kind of started for us, right? So, but I want you to add formatting, make it nice, make it professional, easy to read, borders, headings, colors as appropriate, okay? It doesn't have to be super fancy, but make it look nice, okay? This is something that, like I told you, my intent for it to be is if you're maybe going to apply for a job, This is something you can say, this is the type of work that I do. If you want to know what I can do in Excel, here it is, or here are the types of calculations that we ran. And, you know, the work that we did. And this would be a project that you could show somebody. And with that in mind, that's what I want you to think about as you're handing these things into me, making it look professional. I'm not giving you a template to fill in, because this is part of what I want you to create and use your creativity so it's your own. Okay. So that's what that note is at the bottom there. Now I have it right now. It's due at the end of this week. Okay. So we've created our list. So by Friday is our due date, but it is available until I think it's March 4th, it says here. So that's your like 7-day grace period or so. So if you need to go beyond Friday, that's okay. You won't lose any points, but then after that, as you know, you have to ask for an extension, and then it's 10% off. So any questions about the project task list? The project task list. Eric, did you have a question? Okay. All right. So that's the deal. So I'm going to stop our recording here, and then we'll move on to the next thing.